Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Jonasz Rewiński. The latest reports say the Catholic Church is facing a risk of schism after an ultra-conservative splinter group known as Society of St. Pius X decided to ordain bishops without papal consent. This prompted an urgent reaction from Pope Leo, resulting in the excommunication of those involved. What created this rift inside the Church, and could this be a foreshadowing of a bigger crisis? Joining us here today is Father Stanisław Tasiemski, Vice President of the Catholic Information Agency. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning.
So, excommunication is not a word you actually hear very often on the news today. For some people not really familiar with matters of the Catholic Church, that particular term may sound like something taken from a different era, an era of monks, inquisitors, and burning stakes, in fact. So, let's actually correct this misunderstanding, because this is something that has happened before, and it's happening now for a reason, right?
Yes, surely. The excommunication is the most severe penalty in the Catholic Church. It means, the word formally means, you are no more member of the Catholic Church. You are not in community. And it is simply to declare the truth of the status of certain persons. I mean, in this case, the status of 6 bishops, 2 who ordained and 4 who were ordained, but also priests who are members of the St. Pius X Society, but also what is new, the faithful, lay faithful who formally adhere to the society. It means who exclusively are present on the Mass celebrated by Pius X society members. It means, for instance, they have also the so-called third order. So it is the case of this penalty.
So let's make it clear, because it was reported differently by different sources. This applies not only to the bishops involved in the ceremony, which the Pope said was conducted without consultation with the Vatican, in fact, against his specific instructions by the Vatican, but also to members of the congregation itself.
Yes, but also to lay people. It is for perhaps 38 years ago, it was very clearly declared that the bishops, the one who celebrated ordination and 4 who were ordained, were excommunicated. Nowadays, perhaps it is much more clear. Why? Because they precisely knew what 38 years ago happened, that the dialogue was a very long one, that even if Pope Benedict lifted excommunication in 2009 as an act of goodwill and hope for progress in dialogue, they misused this mercy of the Pope. Just a few days ago, private secretary of Pope Benedict, Archbishop Genswein, very clearly said how painful it was for Pope Benedict that he simply admitted that there are a possibility of different rites in the Catholic Church, that he admired that in Mass, but it not means that the whole problem is rather dogmatic than liturgical. It means if we recognize that both Mass, traditional of the Missal of 1962, before the Second Vatican Council, is the same Mass which is celebrated actually in modern languages after the Council. So it is the same Christ, the same validity of the Mass. It is the essential. If somebody says that this post-conciliar Mass is no more valid or not as valid as the old Mass, then he is in schism. He is simply, it is not true. It is the truth is at stake.
So would you say that this is less about, like you said, less about how the Mass is celebrated, what language is being used, what traditions are being followed, and more essentially about the Church authority and about the unwillingness of some members of the Church to follow instructions from the Vatican?
Yes, what is the Catholic faith is that that the Pope is the one who is, we say in Latin, con Petrus et sub Petrus, with Peter and under the authority of Peter. It means if the Pope precisely, he just not only didn't allow this ordination, but he also expressly said, don't do that. So it is precisely against the will of the Pope.
So why is this rift coming back after so many years? Because as you indicated, it began with Marcel Lefebvre under Pope John Paul II. Later on, Pope Benedict attempted to reverse that. He, in fact, reversed the decree of excommunication in an attempt to mend the ties between the Catholic Church and that group. And yet we're seeing this happening all over again. So does it mean that the process of healing did not take place and that there were these festering grievances within this group still?
Probably there are different persons, and because the Church believes that there are certain people who would like to return after the whole penalties, it is also a special procedure prepared by the doctrine of faith, dicastery for the doctrine of faith, which explains what to do, how to admit the members, former members of the St. Pius X society to the whole communion. It means there are certain conditions. If there is a penalty, it is always to heal this rupture which is existing. We may say, comparing with number of priests, members of the society, they are less numerous than, for instance, the priests in some big Polish archdioceses, like, for instance, of Warsaw. So, in the whole scale of the Church, if we look at the problem statistically, it seems not to be so grave. But in fact, it is grave because it is a wound on the body of Christ, and it is that there is a problem. In Poland, there are some 24, 25 priests of the society operating mostly in big centers like Warsaw, Poznań, Gdynia, Wrocław. But in fact, it is very painful. Simply, I know also one of my former brothers who joined the society, and it is not only a question of theory, but also problem how a person whom I recognize as somebody very generous, very nice person, is in such a situation which is unacceptable. It is difficult to in certain way to speak about, and surely there is a problem for all those who have in family similar situations.
Isn't this problem likely to be exacerbated though? Because when it happened like all those years ago, we didn't really have social media. So you could say that, of course, there were dissenters, they were not really satisfied, but not many people might have heard about it back then. But today, do you think that, the Vatican took into account the fact that they're likely to be very vocal about what happened? They're likely to go out not just to traditional mainstream media, but also they would be taking to social media platforms and saying that for them it is unjust, that they feel excluded. And also ordinary members of that community are likely to be confused. They might have not been aware that the rift is so deep, and all of a sudden they are considered considered no longer part of this Catholic community. What do you think the reaction is going to be?
Simply, the whole situation is very, very confused. The language they use is a language which seems to say that Rome should come back to the holy tradition of which represents ekon. It means the place where ordination took place, and originally 38 years ago also Archbishop Lefebvre ordained for bishops.
So they are doubling down, essentially.
So it means they expect Rome to come back. We represent the holy tradition. We are the only right, and you have to come back. Surely we know that there is also certain confusion in the Catholic Church. On the other side, we may see some situations where where priests are blessing homosexual unions or situations which provoke certain tensions, disunity. But here we have a very arrogant situation in which there is a direct challenge to the See of Peter. Is it Peter who governs the church, or is it Ekon, I mean, Superior General of St. Pius X, is governing the church? Even if they use the name of the Pope celebrating the Mass or local bishop, it not automatically means that they obey to the Pope.
Do you think there is a risk that this represents essentially, the sign that there are likely to be these growing tensions? On the one hand, the Catholic Church, a massive organization with millions of faith all across the world, will wish perhaps to reflect the changes in society to some extent. But there also will be groups like this one that will say, no, we don't want this. We want the tradition, we want the doctrine to remain the same as it has been for centuries, essentially. Do you think that this is the inevitable consequence of modernity catching up to religion, and religion facing very different choices, individuals facing very different choices as to how to respond?
So Church always is called to respond to challenges of every time, every situation. It was precisely the same after the First Vatican Council, when the old Catholic Church grew. We may say also the Tridentine Council was a consequence of Reformation. The situation is quite similar. If somebody refuses the authority of the Roman Pontiff, then there is a schism, and the body of Christ is wounded. Surely it is the task of the Holy See is to declare what means unity, what is legitimate difference inside the Church. For instance, we have many different ways of celebrating Eucharist in different Oriental churches. Even earlier there were more different rites. Even there was Dominican rite, especially in Latin. There was a special rite in different dioceses, regions. So this richness of liturgy needs to be authorized by the Church. And the authority of Peter is essential, is a key for saying, I am a Catholic.
Father Stanisław Tasiemski was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight and experience.
Thank you.
And I'm Jonasz Rewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news, updates and commentary.